Hello, everyone. This is James Song here. Welcome to the TOEFL Show, episode 14. I'm pumped up to start this TOEFL listening learning material today. I hope you are pumped up as much as I am. So we'll get started. All right. So TOEFL listening, the most important skill you must acquire in order to get all the questions right is without a doubt, note-taking skills. You must learn and master how to take notes. Because think about it. Listening passage is playing. While the passage is playing, you cannot see the questions. So only thing you can do is write notes. So you must master the science and art of note-taking. You must master how to take notes, right? So we'll start how to take notes deep dive for the conversation passage. In the future episode, it's completely different animal. So I will do how to write notes, note-taking skills for lecture passage as well. So don't you worry about it, okay? But for today, we'll start with conversation passage, how to take notes, deep dive. Let's go, guys. Okay, guys, here we go. So I'm going to play a conversation passage of TOEFL listening and write notes at the same time, okay? So feel free to write your own notes and then compare your notes with me afterwards. Or if you want to take it slow and really learn the fundamentals of note-taking in TOEFL listening, then, feel free to just watch what I do. What I write down and how I write my notes. Okay. So here comes the listening passage. Let's go, guys.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a librarian.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I need to find a review. It's for my English class. We have to find reviews of the play we're reading. But they have to be from when the play was first performed, so I need to know when that was, and I suppose I should start with newspaper reviews.
Contemporary reviews.
Sorry?
You want contemporary reviews. What's the name of the play?
It's Happy Strangers. It was written in 1962, and we're supposed to write about its influence on American theater, show why it's been so important.
Well, that certainly explains why your professor wants you to read some of those old reviews. The critics really tore the play to pieces when it opened. It was just so controversial. Nobody had ever seen anything like it on the stage.
Really? Was that big a deal?
Oh, sure. Of course, the critics' reaction made some people kind of curious about it. They wanted to see what was causing all the fuss. In fact, we were on vacation in New York. I had to be, around 16 or so. And my parents took me to see it. That would have been about 1965.
Oh, so that was the year it premiered? Great. But newspapers from back then aren't online, so how do I...
Well, we have copies of old newspapers in the basement, and all the major papers publish reference guides to their articles, reviews, etc. You'll find them in the reference stacks and back. But I'd start with 1964. I think the play had been running for a little while when I saw it.
How'd you like it? I mean, it's just two characters on stage hanging around and basically doing nothing.
Well, I was impressed. The actors were famous, and besides, it was my first time in a real theater. But you're right. It was definitely different from any plays that we'd read in high school. Of course, in a small town, the assignments are pretty traditional.
Yeah, I've only read it, but it doesn't seem like it'd be much fun to watch. The story doesn't progress in any sort of logical manner. It doesn't have any real ending either. It just stops. Honestly, I thought it was kind of slow and boring.
Oh, well, I guess you might think that. But when I saw it back then, it was anything but boring. Some parts were really funny, but I remember crying, too. But I'm not sure just reading it. They've done this play at least once on campus. I'm sure there's a tape of the play in our video library. You might want to borrow it.
That's a good idea. I'll have a better idea of what I really think of it before I read those reviews.
I'm sure you'll be surprised that anyone ever found it radical, but you'll see why it's still powerful, dramatically speaking.
Well, there must be something about it, or the professor wouldn't have assigned it. I'm sure I'll figure it out.
Okay. How did you do? Did you catch everything? Was it okay? So I'll go to the top and explain what I have written And by doing that, we will be covering the whole passage in full. All right, we are back at the top. So let me explain to you what I have written. And I'll go through the whole notes to make sense of the whole passage, full passage. Obviously, I could pull up the script, but I mean, that's also a right way of teaching and learning, but that doesn't necessarily improve your listening skills. So I may do it in the future sometime, but I prefer this way a lot more. So just give me a chance. I'll go through my notes and I'll make the sense of everything in the passage that you have just listened. Okay. So student visited the librarian, right? And librarian basically asked, can I help you? So what student needs is he needs to write a review for his English class, the play that they are reading, but he needs to read a review of the first performance of this play, right? And he needs to know when it was. So, where do I start? Which newspaper do I start looking at? And librarian addresses the students, corrects the students by saying what you need is contemporary review. Okay. All right. And asks the name of the play, and the student says it's Happy Stranger, 1962. So obviously this date is when the play was written, when the book was written, not the play was performed, because that's what he is looking for. Okay. So this is when the play was written, but he needs to know when it was first performed as a play. Okay. And the influence and why it's important. Okay. By reading the review of this play. And the librarian says, yeah, I can understand why professor gave you that assignment, because the critics really destroyed the play when it was first played, meaning gave a very, very negative review, extremely negative review when the play was first played, okay? Because the play was so controversial and different, all right? But it kind of made people curious to see the play. This means, how bad could it be? Why is it so negative? I want to see and find out by myself, right? So this is by public. Okay. So for the librarian, for her, when she was 16 years old, she went to New York during vacation, and actually saw the play with her parents in 1965, right? So the students assume the premiere. So premiere is when something was first performed. Okay. So the students wrongly assume premiere was in 1965, but later we find out this was wrong assumption. Okay. See, you have to expect two things, right? You cannot write everything down, because you are going to miss a lot of content because of the speed. You cannot keep up with the listening passage, and that's the worst thing that can happen to you. That will be a disaster, all right? So you cannot write down everything. And second, therefore, you have to expect you to remember some details, okay? You haven't written it down, but you should expect yourself to remember some things that stays in your head, in your brain, even if you didn't write that down. Okay. You have to build the ability to, have that level of expectation. Okay. Anyway. And then I didn't write it down, but the man says, 1965, there was no online newspaper in 1965. So how can I get a resource? How can I get a review that is on newspaper in 1965. Okay. So I didn't write it down, but I remember, not because I was able to memorize, but I understood. So obviously fundamental listening comprehension skills you need to build. It's not just the technical skills that you can acquire to master TOEFL listening. That's a lie. By practicing, listening to several times and building your listening skills, you have to improve your listening comprehension skills, because you need to understand something that is, you're listening to in order to remember it. If you don't understand, then you have no chance to remember it. Okay? All right? And the librarian says, don't worry, old newspaper, articles, references, they're all in the basement of the library in the reference section. So she's basically saying, don't you worry. You can still find the old newspaper that you're looking for in the library, in the basement, in the reference section. Okay? And she says something very important, because what the student is looking for is review of the first performance, review of the premiere of this play. So he needs to know, when was the first time this play was performed, right? And he wrongly assumes it was 1965 when the librarian saw it for the first time, okay? But the librarian says, recommends, suggests the students to look at the newspaper from 1964, because she believes when she saw it, the play was already going on about a year or longer than that, right? So she believes premiere of this play was around 1964 or slightly earlier. So asks the students to look at the newspaper review from 1964 to find out what he is looking for. Okay. And, the student is quite cynical, saying, did you like the play? I thought it was about nothing, And she mentioned she was actually impressed with the play because actors were famous, and, it was very first time she was experiencing the live theater. Okay. And she clarifies, she states it was definitely very different from what she's used to. Okay. And the male student, still kind of cynical, he says, I only read it. So he hasn't seen the play. He only read it. And he believes it's maybe not fun, the play, even if he hasn't seen it. Based on the play that he read, he believes, maybe it's no fun, not logical, no real ending, and slow and boring. And librarian who saw the play responds by saying was definitely not boring. And it was, some parts were funny, and some parts she mentioned she cried, but, I just paraphrased. I understood. I remember. And, like sad, word sad. I could have written crying, but, I decided to paraphrase for my convenience. Okay. So the librarian said, some parts were funny, some parts were sad. So it was definitely not boring at all. Okay. And the librarian kind of gives a solution, because she realized this student hasn't seen the play yet. So the librarian says, I think, this play was performed at least once in the campus in this university, and there must be video of it in the library, right? And the male student agrees, it's a good idea. I should see it to judge it for myself. And librarian says, it may be radical, means very different, very controversial, but it will be very powerful. And he mentioned he will find it out by himself. And he mentioned briefly about, he turns it positive expectation, saying that something like, professor wouldn't have given this task to us if it was nothing, like he says. Okay. So yeah, like I'll watch it. I'll watch the video. Thank you, to find out how good it is by myself. So that's the note. How good is it? Okay. Like, do you need a script? No. Like what have we done? All right. we have covered the whole passage in full by just making sense of the note-taking, right? So I believe this is a slightly better way even. I mean, we may look at the script. That's another way of teaching and learning, but I prefer this way because this still gets the job done, maybe even better. But this encourages you to improve your listening. Because as soon as you look at the script, it's more accurate, exact, so you feel convenient, but it's reading, it's cheating. It's no longer applies our listening skills. Okay, all right. So you may say, "Oh, this is you. You can do this," but there's no way in blue hell, no way in the world I can achieve what you did. No, it's not just encouragement. I'll tell you my secret. Okay. So first, my program can help people from maybe 15 or 20 out of 30 in TOEFL listening, right up to 30 out of 30, right? You can see that, right? It's very complete. You have to accept the challenge to listen to the same passage multiple times. That's my first tip. Okay. This is a test. You need to be used to it. Don't fall into, this wrong idea that, once you listen to it, you understood everything. So there's no more learning to be done. No, you have to listen to it twice, 3 times, 5 times, or even 10 times. Okay. Listen to the same passage multiple times if you want to listen, if you want to improve your fundamental listening skills. Okay. And second, obviously, do note-taking multiple times as well. Of course, like you already did a note-taking, but pretend that you are doing it for the first time and do it multiple times, at least 3 to 5 times, like to the almost like a memorization level. You really see different kind of sense of achievement and sensation when you do the same note-taking for the 5th time, honestly, not looking at the previous version and how much you have improved, how much more you can listen, how better you are writing the notes. So, my secret to success is listen to the same passage multiple times, write the notes to the same passage multiple times. And the last one, this will help you greatly in speaking section as well, is once you've written the notes, actually try to summarize the notes, like make the full sentence of the notes that you have written for the whole notes. So I'll show you the sample. You should do this. Okay, just by looking at the notes, no script. Okay, this will really improve your listening skills and note-taking skills. I guarantee it. Okay, please do this. And this will help you in the speaking sections tremendously. Okay, all right. If you remembered, can I help you? If you didn't remember, just let's start with this. Okay. I need a review from the play in my English class, but when it was first performed, you need contemporary review. It's Happy Strangers, 1962. We need to know the influence and why it's important. Yes, critics really negatively criticized the play when it was first performed because it was so controversial. And it made people curious to see this play. For me, when I was 16-year-old, I saw it with my parents in 1965. Okay, so, but 1965, no online newspaper. So how can I get the resource? Old newspaper is in the basement in the reference section. Don't worry about that. And start looking at the newspaper from 1964, because when I saw the play, it was already being played for about a year or so. Did you like the play? Yes, I was impressed because there were famous actors, and it was very first time I saw the theater. It was very different. I only read the play, but, I don't think it was very fun, not very logical, no ending. I thought it was slow and boring. Well, it was not boring, let me tell you. It was very funny, and I cried in some parts. Actually, this play was played at least once in the campus, so you should watch the video of this play, get it out from the library and watch the video. Great. I think it's a good idea. I need to do that. You will find it radical, but powerful at the same time. Yeah, I will find that out by myself because, professor wouldn't have given us this assignment unless it was, something like this, right? If you can do this, of course, it's going to take time and everyone's different. Some people watching this video, is getting already 26, 27, 28 out of 30 in TOEFL listening and just looking for that 1 or 2 more points. Some other student who may be getting, TOEFL score of 60 to 80, that's fine. You are getting about 15 to 20 or even less than that in TOEFL listening and just trying to ultimately get more than 20 out of 30 in your TOEFL listening, right? You can actually do this in writing as well, if you prefer. If speaking it out instantaneously is too much for you, but it's much more helpful. I recommend you by speaking, just like what I did, okay? But, you have to accept the challenge. You have to do something new to improve. You have to do it in the right way. And this is the perfect way. And I don't think you are going to get this tip, to be honest, from other teacher or elsewhere because I invented this technique. Okay. So I wish you could do this. And, conversation passage, a little bit easier than lecture passage. So might as well, we'll try. Right. So this was the lesson on how to write notes in TOEFL listening, especially in conversation passage. And the next video, let's solve the 5 questions that came out based on this passage. And let's get every question right. And I'll go through all the question types in listening, in conversation passage. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you in my next video. And let's solve all those 5 questions together. Thank you, guys.